Welcome to another episode of Bringing Down the Grindhouse, a podcast where we discuss horror and media. And tonight, stack your bacon and just don't advertise your place on Facebook as we dive into Cordero by Sects.
Hell yeah, that was a way better intro than I was trying to do for the last 3 minutes. I couldn't think of anything, so thank you, Justine.
Yeah, no problem,
for helping me out in my time of need. I appreciate that.
And who are you again?
Oh, Mitch. I'm Mitch.
I'm Mert.
I'm Justine.
And I'm Jonathan.
As you could tell, we've been having a little bit of a rough start there. I think we had to restart this intro like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what it is. I got nothing. I got nothing for this one, and it was not okay.
Hey, sometimes our mojo is just not popping. That's okay.
But Justine showed up, and she didn't just do it to help me, but she did it to help us, the podcast.
It was out of love.
Out of love.
Aww.
So, Cordero, this is, I'll get into a little bit of backstory. So, the pandemic happened, and bands had to figure out how to get a little extra moolah because shows aren't a thing and merch isn't really selling. So, you got a lot of creative outlets firing off from a lot of different artists. So, this one is Sects. They're a Texas-based noise, experimental, industrial type band. I was able to actually catch them live a couple times, and they play a really good show. They have 2 albums, both on the Flenser, which is based in San Francisco. Their live shows consist of 3 smoke machines, gallons of smoke, and strobe lights that go to really high BPMs to a point where people have had seizures at their shows.
Oh my God.
They've had the fire department called because the fire department thinks that the building is on fire because of the smoke. And I witnessed this once at a venue called 1720 in Los Angeles. They opened up for Horror as well as Three Teeth, 2 other industrial bands that are really good. They came out with a chainsaw mid-set without a chain, and we're just going for it. And it was really awesome. And then I got to see an intimate setting at Tidal TK, a fucking venue out here in El Cajon, right down the street from here.
This isn't El Cajon. We're nowhere near El Cajon.
El Cajon Boulevard.
Oh, Boulevard. Yeah.
El Cajon Boulevard, just right down the street from here. Just a tiny ass room. So much so that the singer was right next to me screaming. I couldn't see 2 feet in front of him, and I was hallucinating from the strobe lights.
Oh, jeez.
So these guys, they're very creative in what they do. They make their music all through samples. So they make their own samples, or they get it from the internet or from horror movies, and they make music around it. And I kind of got onto the scene when they released their 2016 album End Position on the Flenser, and it was a critically acclaimed album because of the experimentation in that. I noticed that every time that I got a vinyl from them, that they would have snippets of a story or a piece of a story that the main singer / lyricist Leo, I totally capped on the name. I've had it this entire time. I got it.
Leo, the author, right?
Yes, it is Leo Ashline, also the best D&D name ever.
Honestly, yeah.
Right? It's really good. As well as Sean Ringsmith. But Leo Ashline, he would always put these snippets in there, and it was all creative writing kind of stuff. I believe it's supposed to tell an overarching story between them, because these were included in the Gentrification series, which is a series of EPs that they've been releasing for years, as well as their 2 main full lengths. So I always knew that there was a creative guys behind it. So in this Cordero, it is a audiobook that is an hour long. It is available only on their Bandcamp for the low price of $10. So if you'd like to support them and check it out, go check out their Bandcamp where it's up right now. The piece is also accompanied with, music and atmosphere by the electronics person, Sean Ringsmith, and it adds a really big element to it.
I'm kind of sad because I only read the story. I didn't actually listen to it like you guys did. So I feel like I had a completely different experience of it. And I'm going to go back and listen to it. Yeah. I know it spooked the hell out of John, though.
Oh, it spooked the hell out of all of us.
Oh, yeah. No, I was definitely at work on my lunch listening to this. And I jumped when he does the scream that Cordero makes at him while he's running. Ugh. He does the scream, and it's just so sudden. And I just was like, okay, fuck. I was going to relax, and now I cannot. So
I was listening to in my car, and shoot, dude, the maps came up and was like, turn left. And I was like, I jumped out of my seat, dude, when that happened. And just the scream itself, because Leo does the harsh vocals in the project.
Oh,
so you know he could scream.
Oh, yeah.
And when it hits, he does a good one.
I remember I just hopped out of the shower, and Jonathan had been listening to it for a little bit. And I come out, and he's like, by the way, there's a scream in this, and it's unsettling. So
Right.
just trigger warning. If you guys get spooked by loud noises and you listen to the recording, expect loud noises.
This story is pretty original, I'd say. It's a very modern kind of story, because we're dealing with a person putting up their listing for a place on Facebook, as well as other outlets such as Craigslist.
Yeah, so was it that this guy owned like a house and he was renting out a room in the house, or was it like an apartment?
It was more like a small house behind a house, kind of
like a guest house.
Yeah, like a
thing.
guest house.
Yeah, and he kind of describes himself as sort of just scraping by, like he's just
Yeah.
barely able to afford rent. So he figured, hey, I'm gonna take the burden off these bills and get someone in here. Why not? Need a roommate. Let's do it. And the other people who'd lived there before were like not very contributive to the house, and they kind of.
I'm sure we've all encountered roommates like this.
Oh, of course. I've probably been that roommate at one point or another.
Yeah. What kind of roommate were you? The one that stacks bacon, or the one that doesn't pay rent?
Ooh.
Actually, neither of those things.
Oh.
Though I have been the one that cooked bacon. But not really. No, I'm kind of the guy that like, I'll like take the plate. Well, this was a bad habit of mine, but it would be like taking the plates into my room and eating in there while I'm watching or playing games or something.
Yeah.
And then they just start to accumulate, and I don't know how that happened. Maybe it's just my inability to assess my surroundings and like do that. But I've gotten better, I swear. I swear I've gotten better, right?
So if I go into your room right now, I'm not going to see any plates.
Oh fuck!
Actually,
no.
you know what? You will. There are probably a couple coffee cups around.
But
it's gotten better.
It always starts with the one cup, right?
I
Gotten
know.
better though. It starts with
No,
the one
I get
cup
it.
though.
See, like before I had like my own place and I was staying like at my grandparents' house, I'd do the same. I was like always in my room. I'd eat in my room, and like by midweek there's just a couple plates, usually empty, sometimes maybe like a pizza crust or two, but that's besides the point. I feel you.
But like sometimes like you get anxious though, because you don't want to be seen by your other roommate
carrying out
walking
a
out
fucking
with your
mound.
horde of plates and they're like, oh, that's where all the forks went.
Yeah.
Oh, that's where all the plates were. That's why we have half the plates that we're supposed to. Huh? And then you're like, you don't want that interaction, so you wait till they're gone,
Or
and then
it's
you
like
do all the dishes.
Or it's the middle of the night and you're creeping down the
Yeah,
stairs
yep.
with your handfuls of
Oh man,
plates.
oh, it's too real.
This is a very like realistic take on it, because he describes like, if I could talk about 10 of those people who were my roommates, about half of them were good because they didn't talk to me. The other half wanted to socialize in the commons area, and he hates that stuff. I was trying to go through this review without saying the word nihilistic, so I'm going to keep trying to do that. The main character is like very secluded.
Yeah.
Very like trying to keep to themselves. They have their own things. They could care whatever the fuck you're doing.
Introverted.
Introverted.
Yeah.
Correct.
Although there was like one moment where he did go out to socialize and felt good, but overall, like he doesn't really seem to want to have people around, especially not in his home, because it doesn't seem like he has people over. He goes to see people if he does.
Right. And that's the thing. He also worked from home
Yeah.
too, which was like a very COVID kind of thing.
Yeah. He's very homebody.
Yeah. And so he puts this listing up, and he gets a text or a message on Facebook from someone in his message requests, because we all know in Facebook, if you're not friends with them, they go straight to there. And it says, I'll take the room. And that was it. And so he kind of invites this guy over, and it doesn't seem off, but the guy looks at the room in 2 seconds and says, I'll take the room.
Mm.
And because he needed the rent that month, proceeds to go in with this roommate, and his name is Cordero.
Cordero Ramirez, I think.
Yep, Cordero Ramirez. And everything seems normal for the first week, and then it happens.
It starts with the bacon.
The bacon.
And the thing is, this is why I think the narration and the sounds come into play, because you can hear some cracks of like bacon popping. You can also hear like doors and other hinges as well. So you feel like you're in the space with the main character.
There's definitely a lot of like sensory addition into this story, on top of like the amazing soundtrack and audible recordings that go with this. There's also like the imagery. I feel like bacon is like something everybody knows. Everybody knows what cooking bacon smells like. And like it's the smells in this story that I feel like are really prevalent. The smell of bacon, and later on the smell of rot and piss.
And empty beer cans and cigarette smoke that stains the air.
Mm-hmm.
This is sort of a, I guess you would say an example. Says I did not read it, and Justine was I think the only one of us that actually sat down and just read the whole thing instead of listening to it. I would say that that's pretty phenomenal that it was able to create those sensory details to you while you were reading it.
Yeah.
Which is a very different, like, so I'm very interested to hear a lot of your takes for this one since you actually read it instead of just listening, of course. But the listening itself is its own special experience. It reminded me kind of like radio shows.
Oh, kind of like that. You said his name last time.
There's I don't know what's the
Orson Welles. That's what
Orson Welles. Yeah,
I thought it was H.G. Wells.
H.G. Wells. Yeah,
yes, he did War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds. Yeah,
it's
kind of like that sort of thing.
Wasn't Orson Welles the guy that did the radio show for it though? No,
wait. He was an author on his own.
No, okay. So I'm trying to remember I'll bring up the author or the guy that did the radio show where people thought they were getting invaded.
That's War of the Worlds.
Yeah,
and it's H.G. Wells.
I'm talking about the narrator for that. That was
the narrator for it.
I have no idea.
Actually,
they also use some soundscapes as well in that. But yeah, the entire premise is pretty realistic because you're getting a new roommate and just dealing with their weird shit that slowly creeps up. And they talk about this like. You could see the cracks because they present themselves so cleanly at first.
And he even made note of that in the beginning when he was talking about his past roommates, is how they always put their best foot forward when they first meet you. But then as they start to relax, you start to see more flaws in their personality and things that kind of turn you off.
Right. And even so, like wanting to kick them out or find a new roommate entirely.
Yeah.
I mean, filling up my fridge with nothing but bacon and moving all my crap aside, the audacity.
Honestly.
I was already angry too.
Right? Exactly. Welcome back, John.
Right. I had to sneak away to the bathroom real quick.
Yeah, understood. That makes absolute sense. Drinking your water and whatnot.
So I read it and I listened to it. It was funny because I was listening to it and then the scream happened. I got spooked. I stopped listening to it, started reading it, and I was like, well, I have to listen to the rest of it. And then I listened to the rest of it, and it's really good both ways. Like the writing is good. I liked the descriptive pieces that you would get when you talk about the dude just being creepy, like staring through his window like in the middle of the night is so unsettling. And then like him not being able to do anything about it really.
Yeah.
As he's like running around the house. The guy's like running around all day, which is even weirder.
That was a part that freaked me out.
Just nonstop, like isn't tired. Like, so he obviously hunts people. Like this is his game. So
it makes me wonder, like, is Cordero even a human?
No.
Probably not. I'm going to say no just because of the weird diet and just like unusual amount of exercise.
I was speculating werewolf.
Same.
I was thinking
totally
that
thinking
too,
that
and
also.
I thought that's where they were going to go with
interesting.
this, is that he's a werewolf. Because when he's eating nothing but meat, granted, he does cook the meat, which was a little like off of what typical werewolf diet would be. Not that I know what a werewolf diet is. Anyways, that, and then running back and forth constantly.
That part is
like
probably one of the most unsettling things because he goes in at noon and he just sees Cordero and he's like, oh, he's just exercising. Okay.
Yeah.
And he's running at the edge of the forest, which is like near the back of their like small like house.
Yeah.
And so then he leaves and goes and gets drinks with his friends and looks out and sees them again.
Just nonstop sprinting.
Nonstop sprinting.
He said he'd been running for what, like 10 hours straight?
Yeah. And that, I think the scariest part is the descriptor for it is he goes, Cordero, what the fuck are you doing?
It's so loud when that part happens. But it's also like you can tell the mic's not quite in front of him.
Yeah.
So, but it's still a jarring moment.
Cordero, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, it's one of those moments.
Like that.
He describes Cordero as a very fit and smaller man, but very built.
Yeah.
And he was like,
really
noticeably
muscular.
when people work out, you see them breathing. And the big descriptor here was that there was no breath, no like hunch of the shoulders up and down. Just and then that scream.
The creepy old lady with him is also very disturbing.
Oh,
Supposedly
man.
Slenderman-esque with a smile that goes all the way up to like her gums because she had no teeth. So just a huge grin.
I remember like watching, I think it was like Ghost Hunters or something when I was really young, and this was before I really got into horror. And there's one ghost that, because they'll make like little images of what the ghost might have looked like, and one was of basically like a big floating head that had very similar descriptions to this woman. So like hearing that description made my stomach churn. Like they said she had a head that was probably twice as big as like a normal head. And then everything was sagging so much that her face looked like impossibly long.
Yeah, they like threw some skin on her head is what it looked like.
You could see the creases. It's almost as if her jaw is about to fall off.
And her eyes were just black holes.
Ooh.
Like they weren't even eyes, just sockets of void darkness.
Another thing that is scary is like the hurt sound that he hears prior to Cordero even moving in.
Oh yeah, he
like
said it sounded like a hum coming through like a Walkman, kind of distorted, like the tape's all fucked up.
And it comes right up to his door.
Yeah, there's some great audio production for these moments because there's actually differences in what you're hearing as the story progresses. And so like as it gets later, the tension really starts building as he's going to figure out what's in this house. Like where are they going? Why do they have addresses for all these people? Like there's just so much mystery to it. Maybe
Murr can shed light on what you call the creepy squeaks, or what I call the creepy squeaks. You know,
Yeah.
like that I don't know what you call that at all. I have no idea what they're just sound effects, I guess.
They're pad synthesizers. I would suspect, and just like you're playing those discordant chords and just raising up the tension with it.
Yeah.
I know the thing that scares me the most is these guys are based out of Austin, Texas.
Oh, geez.
So like knowing that they live there and like they made a story, they probably know the streets that they wrote in the story as well.
Legit place.
I mean, if you know anything about like rural Texas, they have tons of these houses that are just off in the back and on these off center roads.
Yeah.
And so it's a totally believable setting for the story. And after Cordero does a scream and runs into the forest, that's when things get like they take a turn.
Things get a little weird.
They get spooky.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you immediately get the impression based on the stuff he finds in the house that they're just straight up kidnapping people. Like these people are gone because he goes and asks around for them. Like, hey, have you seen this person?
See, I thought it was going to turn into, it went from a werewolf story to a serial killer story.
Right.
Because he's collecting all of these mementos, and I assume also the photographs that he found of people that were really off-putting.
So weird.
Like there was one in particular that kind of like made me unsettled. Is they said there was a photograph of a woman holding a small black pig looking directly into the camera and crying with like her makeup running down her face.
Yeah, they had the weird photos on the wall.
One thing that really spooks me is the difference in body shapes in a lot of these horror things. Because we saw, what was that movie? It Follows.
Yeah.
How like it took the form of a fat naked man as well as a tall, slender figure.
Yeah, that dude comes in the door.
The one that really scared me the most was the tall man on a tiny tricycle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He's like going away from the person.
Yeah. It should be noted that the cover for Cordero is also within this main house setting. That art was made by AJ Garces Bomer. They do all the art for all their albums.
Oh, that's dope. I like that art, the art for the cover a lot.
Yeah.
It's creepy. It's like an old derelict house.
I wouldn't say for all of them, but for a good amount, they did it for the last album, The Kicking Mule. So
nice.
they like to, up their aesthetic, and I think it really fits their projects.
It's definitely a lot different than what you might hear. Most audiobooks don't really include too much music. Most fan-made ones usually have a lot of music. It's just like a choice they make whenever they're doing like professional audiobooks. They will have voice actors, like different people doing the voice acting, but that's probably about the limit. So to hear the full production like all the way through, I don't think there was really a silent moment.
I think the narration really helps too.
Narration is really good. It's slower than I'd like, but it makes sense for the setting, for it being like a horror story.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that as well.
The climax builds, and you just have this immense amount of tension.
Yeah.
As he's going through the separate
middle
layers.
portion is really where the story gets going, especially when he's going down the hallway and it's like these weird partitions of like garbage bags that he has to kind of set aside. And as he's going deeper, there's just trash like all over the ground. And then when he crawls and finds out like what they're doing in this little area, that's like the worst. I don't think anything could be worse besides the man grabbing him and you're like, fuck, he's about to get caught.
That was something too that was interesting about the space. Is the first time he comes upon it, it's a little like fresher looking, you know, things aren't as rotten.
Also,
there's not the hole in the middle of the floor where the creatures are hiding.
There's a whole truck.
There's like food laid out and beer cans and cigarette butts. There's a TV that's on. There's a sofa.
Yeah.
And when he returns there again towards
hole.
the end of the story, none of that's there. The place looks a little more overgrown. Things are a little more rotten and falling apart. There's no furniture, and there's this huge gaping hole in the middle of the floor.
This is what really gave me the impression that it wasn't just like an ordinary kind of killer. Like there was some weird creatures that had inhabited this place. Because even at the end, they're saying that when they went back, the house was just burnt. Like there was nothing there.
And it had been burned down for about 10 years.
For a long time, yeah. So it's like, did he like enter into some weird realm of where these creatures existed? And then like just to have the weird like sexual thing that's happening where the like woman creature is just like on top of someone in a bag, like in a garbage bag, and she's just like grinding on them, and the dude is just laughing. He's like laughing about what's going on, and then he hears some commotion go on, and then that's when he just fucking chases him down, and you're like, you already know what he can do. He can fucking run all day. He's not gonna let him go.
What was also interesting too is Cordero had like a metal pole or something that he was just poking people in the bags with. Which I always wondered, like, what was sort of, if there was any sort of symbolism behind him having this metal pole.
Yeah, that's true.
I can't personally say. I couldn't really think of anything other than just how, like, maybe, like, the devil poking at, like,
yeah,
people.
I was thinking that. Like, I wish I knew more of the inspiration behind this story, because I feel like there's some lore going on here. But, like, it's a short story, so you don't really have time to get all the details about what these things are. We just know there's some sort of dark creatures.
Right.
Yeah, it's
go ahead.
I would say that really what this story is, where the horror of this story comes in, what really makes it fearful is similar to what The Quiet Boy does as well.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't really explain why.
Yeah.
It doesn't explain why, it doesn't, and then even then it
mystery.
extrapolates even further, because at first you could be like, maybe he's possessed by something, maybe he's a werewolf, and then the other parties come into play. The lady, and then the other guy, and then like all these other.
Yeah, there must have been like 3 different entities, because you have Cordero, who's like their henchman basically.
Yeah.
You have the creepy old lady, who I assume is the one in charge, and then you have this disembodied voice.
Yeah,
that's just humming and following him around, because the voice is separate from the other two.
Yeah, it did talk to him in the first encounter in the house too. Like, what are you doing? And they use a computerized voice for that.
That was good. That's really good. Also, interesting that you mentioned that there are the different entities for that. So I hadn't really considered that there was a separate thing. Thought it was something they might be projecting onto the area, but it could be something entirely different.
I kind of like the idea of like a hag cult. But like
geez.
a really weird one, like extra weird.
What if Cordero is like some sort of shapeshifter?
Or he's like a golem or something that loves to eat bacon.
What a weirdo. Yeah.
He needs to eat flesh to sustain his body. That's why he eats so much meat.
He really struck me as like a sort of like a reaper, kind of.
Yeah.
Like he'd be the one who collected all of these people for them. And then, you know, there was the old lady. And then maybe there was something that was like it didn't have a body. It was kind of just like always around. And so it was kind of monitoring what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So the corkboard with the keys. That shit's unsettling to me.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that like he has been moving around from place to place as a guy, like just coming into people's life to be their roommate, and then slowly bringing them down to that house.
Oh yeah, like how our protagonist here was smart enough to take some evidence with him,
right?
Because you know these keys all have the addresses on them, so he
even
goes
grabbed
to one
his
of
own to check if they worked.
His own key was there too of his address, and he went to one of these addresses and asked about the person. And I guess the person that lived there had been gone for a while, but shortly before they went missing, they got a new roommate who, you know, he asked a neighbor and described pretty much what Cordero looks like.
And the car he drives. Which is interesting that he drives a car in the first place.
Oh, man.
Although I think the neighbor also said that he never really saw the car leave the driveway.
Yeah.
Just running back and forth, waiting for him to get ready.
Jesus.
Jeez.
Another thing that also was unsettling was the picture of the woman Tran.
Finding
the Polaroid in the bush.
Oh yeah, that's right.
later having to bring that evidence to police. I don't know how this guy didn't get incarcerated.
Yeah, because they were like, "What the fuck? You did it!" Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they blamed him for stuff.
That was another thing, referring to our last episode where we talked about the quiet boy. Something that I was wondering too, because I feel like in this situation, when a whole family gets murdered and there's a lot of uncertain circumstances around it, but this little kid is still here and hasn't told anyone. I don't know why they didn't first suspect that maybe this little kid did it,
Right.
And same thing with our protagonist in this story is the cops kind of just believed his story and didn't seem to suspect him as a suspect.
The thing is, they describe the area as these bodies are fresher, but the dirt itself has not been moved.
Yeah, which is interesting. They really changed up the area they were in.
It's a very supernatural kind of occurrence. What's also pretty scary is the fact, I mean, not scary, but he had to go through rigorous amounts of interviews.
Yeah.
Probably at least 10 days worth of just trying to explain to police that he is not the murderer.
It's not me. I did like the idea that they may have moved on to a different area. They're very much like this weird traveling carnival type shit where they find an area and start hunting people, and then when they start getting suspected, they're going to just go somewhere else and no one has any answers.
I really liked your idea of it being sort of another dimension sort of thing.
Yeah, I felt like they were coming in. So there's the, what is it? Something evil this way comes is that it touches on that idea that the carnival itself is they exist only within that time period. And then they move to a different area and people don't have any memories of it.
So could you possibly say that maybe the Cordero house is something that moves itself?
Yeah, I would think so.
I like
Baba
that idea.
Yaga.
Yeah.
The Baba Yaga is a Russian cryptid.
Has legs.
An old woman that lives in a house that has chicken legs. What if it's something kind of like that? Because she's been known to eat people, and she's an old hag, or appears as such.
Yeah.
I haven't really heard much about a Baba Yaga hunting with other sort of creatures,
right,
but
it
could be some sort of influence there.
Could be other weird cryptids that kind of got a different treatment on what you're seeing there.
And even so, this character, this main protagonist, he moves far the fuck away from Texas, man. He goes all the way to New York.
He's all the way in the city. He's I'm never going back to the, I'm never leaving the city.
Never have another roommate.
The flavor, on top, just I don't want a fucking apartment with a windowsill because I don't want a chance of anyone coming through the fucking window.
Dude, I'd freak you out. Made the right move. I did appreciate him going and prepping himself, getting tools.
After having a couple shots of vodka.
It's one of those horror movie moments where you see them just getting ready to fight whatever it is. And he goes in, he's nope. And just runs out.
He's
man, I didn't drink enough before I came here.
Holy shit. Yeah, I would have fucking ran away from that too. That's especially with the dude who's reaching out to me save me. And you're oh fuck, there's people on the walls. How many people are buried on this entryway that you're going into?
And all those items probably are from victims.
Yeah, exactly. So who knows how long they've been there.
For an hour, I think or a short read, I think it presented itself very well.
I think it did well. My only critique is that I feel it should have started later. So I didn't need the whole intro bit.
Yeah, where it's kind of like a flashback.
Yeah, especially because it's a short story already. So you should really just start in the shit. You really should have started first night of the scare. And you didn't even have to go through the interview. You could just be I just interviewed this guy. I don't know about him. And then the first night something happens. And that would have been a great start. Because then you have more room for an ending, because I feel the ending just fell off, and I was and it's not because it's bad, it's just because I wanted more out of the story and the mystery of who they were. It would have been better, I think, for him to be captured and try to get away,
kind of a quick wrap up, they were all right, let's wrap this up now and let's get it finished. I like the build up though.
Yeah. It's great tension in the middle.
Yeah,
of it.
Absolutely. But I even like the intro though. I'm gonna have to disagree with you, and I actually like him going through the interview process because it makes Cordero seem more human.
Oh,
and
gotcha.
So it keeps up that illusion that he's creating that he's done to everyone else.
Oh,
I agree. Also,
that's why I dig
becomes
it.
important later on.
Yeah, exactly. So
it
it returns back to the idea that's presented in the beginning as well.
I think also the intro sort of makes this tale a little bit more modern and also relatable, because he does mention a couple modern things like using Facebook Messenger. And,
True.
Everybody advertises for roommates online, and not everybody, but in most cases, if people don't know somebody already, they're probably advertising online. And it kind of puts yourself into the story, because you can see yourself in this sort of situation. I'm sure we've all had to go through trying to find roommates and having awful roommates.
Right.
But what if one of those roommates was actually a adversary.
A supernatural entity.
I know, for real. I did actually. I was hoping that at the end, someone would just show up anyway. Like he's like leaving his door to go get his mail or something, and they're in the hallway, and you're like, "Oh fuck!"
It was Cordero.
Yeah,
and
he just runs down the hallway, and you're like,
see him running down the hall or down the street.
Or you could just say, he gets a knock on the door, and he looks through the peephole and just sees a black figure with white eyes.
Yeah, that'd be good too. Something like that would have been great because it's like sort of inescapable. But good for the character for getting away. I was like, yes, he's safe. Like I was rooting for him. So
we were rooting for you.
Right.
We were all rooting for you.
Yeah, we were all like, yeah, I hate shitty roommates too, dude. You fucking get yours, homie. You got it.
Well, well, that's the thing. Like, I think one of the best things for a writer, even if they like have a somewhat rushed ending, that the reader or listener wants more.
Yeah.
So definitely,
a good way to end it.
It makes me realize that Leo Ashline is a very creative person, and that they could like get these stories fleshed out, because I've just gotten snippets from these vinyls, and I've always been intrigued by them.
Yeah, this is pretty fleshed out. As far as backstory goes, there is a good amount of explanation for what's going on, but there's also a great amount of mystery left in it, where you, like what we were doing just now, where we're speculating, like, where do they come from? Like, why are they doing these sort of things? And this is what you want people to ask when you're looking at your stories, because you're not giving them everything. You're not spoon-feeding everything to someone.
Yeah.
And so in this case, it worked really well, because we still want to know. Like, the story ended, and we're like, well, what else happened? Like, where did they go? Or did they move somewhere else? And so in that way, it works really well.
I really hope that Street Sects makes more of these.
Yeah, this will be dope if they keep doing that. That audio production was so good.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, they're known for their music, but they put this up on their Bandcamp for $10. I'm going to advertise it again because it's great.
Yeah.
Just during the pandemic, and I've always wanted to talk about it on the podcast.
Dope.
And so I thought it would be a perfect time, because we're doing our literature episode.
Yeah.
And it just makes me want more from them. So I think that's always a good thing after you come out of something like that.
Yep. Definitely.
What would you guys rate this?
So I only read this story. I didn't actually listen to it. And from a reading standpoint, like, I thought it was really interesting. I'm probably going to give it like about a 7. My reasoning is, typically when I read things, I'm like really into illustrative writing. And I feel like this story did have some really good illustrative moments, as I was mentioning before, about like the sensory feelings you get from reading this. Overall, like, the writing is pretty like direct and straightforward, although it's peppered with these moments of descriptive sensory, like the smells, the sights, the sounds that you'll get. But I do feel like there were some parts that could have been further developed, especially the ending and some little in-between moments. I just wanted a little bit more from it, but that doesn't mean I don't think the story is fantastic. And I think if I had listened to it as well, my rating would be a lot higher, because from what I'm hearing, this recording must have been really dope.
And it was. It was quite dope indeed. Oh, yes. I would say that after listening to it, and then knowing that it's also like a noise band, it's very cool to see them kind of stepping outside of their boundaries. And that's why I think that the story itself, I would firmly put it at a 7, but it bumps up to an 8 for me. Just because they're stepping outside their boundaries and they're using their musical talents to create something totally different than what they typically do. And I really admire them for that, and for them to find something creative to put out there to support their project. In a time when it's very difficult to do that.
Yeah.
When it was very difficult.
Props to them for branching out.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like, very, and the actual alliterative piece itself is very good.
Yeah. And it's super interesting to read.
And yeah, and the sounds and everything just make it that much more intense and horrifying, and they definitely hit the mark with what they were trying to do, for sure.
I'm going to give this a 9 because those are my boys.
Yeah.
I started my project because I really like them.
Hell yeah.
So they're
You're talking about Gunshot Wound?
Gunshot Wound, yeah. They're a very big inspiration. They're just like one of those bands that made me want to make that style of music. So hearing them go from their first album to all these EPs and splits to just, like Mitch said, making a horror production audiobook, it made me realize that all the snippets that I've been reading were going to accumulate to something, and that something was fantastic.
Yeah.
And so I want to see more from that. The story itself, though, I think it's perfect example of like building tension. My hair was up a lot listening to this in the car.
Yeah, for real.
And then I was telling later before, but when my maps would go turn left here, I fucking jumped.
Oh, yeah, the sound scared you.
Yeah. So it's a very good audio like sequence, and for them, I give them an 8.
I'm going to give it an 8 or an 8.5 and offer some positive criticism. I think the story is really good in the middle. Like, do not touch the middle because the tension that's growing when he is traveling through the tunnel, he's figuring out who they are and what they're doing is fantastic. I think it needs to be sharpened. I think the story needs to be edited once or twice over, cut out things that you really don't need in it, and you'll start getting moments that are going to all connect together because the story structure kind of broke for me a little bit as I was going through it, and they didn't connect well. But that middle section had me. It was gripping. You're watching it or you're listening to it, and it felt like I knew what was going on because it's descriptive, and you had the soundscape to go along with it. So it was really impressive as far as like an audio production point of view. And then the story itself goes well with it, so it needs to just be sharpened a little bit, and I think it'll be a really good piece once it's done.
I do have a question before we wrap things up. Mur, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the vocalist that's reading it, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
All right, so he has a great voice for this.
What a great narration voice.
Great narration voice, absolutely. So, bro, keep up what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely keep doing narration. Yeah,
no
you
flops,
got the voice
man.
for it.
All
Also,
gas.
no mistakes, none that I could find in the recording, and it seemed to me
that
it
we
was
heard
a single. Yeah, right. It seemed like it was a single piece of recording, which is great editing. You could not tell where he cut it if he had to. So I think it helps to have the music. I think in the background, but it worked really well. I think so. High rating.
Hell yeah. Well, I think that's pretty much all we got for that. Street Sects, Cordero. $10 on their Bandcamp.
Check it out.
Check them out. Also check out their music. I highly recommend their first album, End Position, and the entire Gentrification series. It is a series of EPs that all talk about different subjects.
Nice.
Very sweet. I'm going to walk us out. Grab your coats, everybody.
All right. Wait, I left my keys in the bathroom. Give me a second.
Shit.
Grab the Pit Vipers, babe.
Bring all the cats. Bring the cats.
Yeah.
They have to go with us, too. Get the cats smoking jackets.
Baby.
Smoking jackets.
It's for the cats.
Get them little helmets.
Yeah, little helmets, too.
Yeah.
Little swords.
All right, we're all ready.
Yeah. All right. We are bringing down the Grindhouse, a podcast that discusses horror in media. Make sure to check out our Patreon, where you could donate $2 a month to get a horror piece of media recommended to us. We will take it into consideration when making our episodes. Also check us out on our social medias. We have the Facebooks, the Twitters, and the Instagrams.
Yes.
Also check out our merch. We have a Teespring. We have t-shirts as well as hats. I want to put some new designs up there. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming out.
They didn't go anywhere, though. They're in their homes.
We're talking to us. We all gathered.
Oh,
here
you're
tonight.
talking about us?
Yeah.
Us.
Well, I didn't go anywhere. I'm at home.
Man,
You're in my home.
Right, yeah, you're in my house. We went
If
through the
anything,
whole quarantine.
you guys came
Can you
out.
believe that shit? We kept the podcast going.
We kept going throughout quarantine.
In quarantine. We did a few episodes, like over Skype and Zoom, and then we were like, all right, we're back. Let's figure it out. We'll get to keep doing episodes like in
We
person.
did our interview over
Yeah.
That was cool. That was cool.
That was
to
cool.
Get that done.
Now we're like over 2 years now.
Yeah. Thank you for all your support.
We love you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm Mitch.
I'm Mur.
I'm Justine.
And I'm Jonathan. Thank you.